Listen carefully. What I'm about to say isn't a pretty phrase to distract you or a consolation to push you until tomorrow. It's a law, and law doesn't negotiate with your past, doesn't ask for permission from your fear, and doesn't bow before what your eyes perceive as real. The visible world is a delayed mirror. It returns with some delay the state you sustained internally. You can call it luck, destiny, coincidence, injustice, bad luck. But life doesn't move by labels. It moves by states. And states are silent choices repeated until they become identity. Most people live trying to convince the world to change, as if the world were a difficult judge. They collect evidence, ask for signs, beg for confirmation, make promises, and when a door doesn't open when they want it to, they collapse as if that were the final truth. It's not. It's just an old photograph of the state you've been using. Do you want to see your reality obey? Then stop arguing with the photograph and change the lens. The universe will be compelled to lay everything at your feet after that. After you stop asking and start assuming, after you stop reacting and start commanding, after you stop living as a visitor to your own destiny and take the position of one who decides internally what life will have to show externally. There's a first key, and it separates those who run after results from those who make results run after them. You don't create out of desperate desire. You create out of identity. Imagine your life as a control room full of invisible levers. Many people spend their day pressing external buttons, sending messages, changing resumes, changing clothes, changing strategies, moving cities, changing topics, changing promises, and internally they remain the same person. The person who waits, the person who fears, the person who feels smaller than what they want. And then they wonder why the world doesn't help. The world doesn't help. The world obeys, but it only obeys a command, not a request. The first principle is straightforward. Stop defining yourself by what's happening and start defining yourself by what already is in the end. It's not pretending. It's residency. You don't visit a state like someone on vacation who then returns to internal misery. You live there. It's like tuning a radio. You don't ask the radio to play a station, you adjust and fix the frequency. While you turn the dial, there's noise and interference and your mind says, it's not working. It is. The noise is just the sound of the old channel trying to pull you back. Fix it. Choose a final identity and treat it as your home. The final identity isn't a distant dream. It's the place from which you decide, feel, and see. If you want prosperity, don't start by asking for the number to increase. Start by feeling dignity as an internal climate. Feel secure internally before the bank statement changes. If you want love, don't start by chasing attention. Start by living the sensation of being naturally chosen. If you want recognition, stop bowing to be seen. Start walking internally as someone who is inevitable. The world doesn't respond to what you explain, it responds to what you inhabit. And what you inhabit shows in your way of speaking, your posture, your gaze, the pattern of your decisions, what you tolerate, what you cut, what you accept as normal. Perhaps you'll say, but I can't feel that. You can. You've just learned to feel the opposite through repetition. Feeling is training. A person who has lived with their head down for years finds it strange to keep their spine straight. At first, it hurts, but pain isn't a sign of error, it's a sign of adjustment. Start small. Choose a single detail that represents the final life and step into it. Imagine arriving home and being greeted with respect. Imagine opening the app and seeing financial peace as something common, not a miracle. Imagine being in a difficult conversation and still you remain firm, calm, whole, because your identity doesn't depend on the other's reaction. You don't need to build a whole castle in one day, you need to live today on the right land. And now, before I move on to the next point, I'll give you a practical bridge because understanding without practice becomes mere mental entertainment. If you want a clear path to train this state change every day, with exercises, steps and directions that help you stop oscillating and consolidate your new identity. The material in the pinned comment link serves exactly that purpose, to turn an idea into a habit. Use it as training for focus and applied imagination, and you'll notice that your internal consistency becomes stronger than any external appearance. When you choose a final identity, the second test arises. The world will challenge you with contrary evidence. It will present delays, numbers that don't add up, doors that seem locked, people who disappear, cold responses, and it will whisper, "See, nothing has changed." And this is where most people betray their own decision. The second principle is closing the door. Closing the door isn't denying life. It's denying the power of appearances over your internal truth. It's separating fact from meaning. The fact may be, it hasn't arrived yet. The meaning the mind wants to impose is, it will never arrive. You cut the meaning and maintain the command. Think of a sculptor. They look at a raw block and see the final form before any cuts. If they despair with every tap of the chisel, saying it doesn't look like it yet, they abandon the work. But the sculptor understands process. The visible world is the block. Your state is the final form. Each day is a tap of the chisel, and it's not always pretty. There are chips, there is dust, there is noise. But that doesn't define the work. It defines the labor. You close the door when you stop using the moment as a sentence. You stop turning a not now into never. You refuse to be hypnotized by the instant. You send a proposal and they don't respond. You close the door. Silence isn't rejection. It's an interval. You apply for a job and they say they'll analyze. You close the door. Analysis isn't refusal. It's the path aligning. You start a project and things seem slow. You close the door. Slowness isn't failure, it's gestation. The mind wants a trial, it wants to judge everything immediately. You don't give it that stage. You refuse to live in judgment. You live in command. And command doesn't ask chaos for an opinion. This requires an internal gesture that few people have the courage to make. Stop over-explaining. The old state loves discourse, justification, defense, blame, comparison. It didn't work because. I couldn't because. They didn't do it because. All of this is the old self trying to remain in command. Cut it. When contrary evidence arises, retreat internally and reaffirm with calm firmness the chosen state. Not to convince the world, to maintain your own station. You don't need to shout for the mirror to change, you need to change your position in front of it. And here comes the third principle, which accelerates everything you call a turning point. Directed silence and energy economy. Most people lose their power through leakage. They decide one thing and, minutes later, undo it out of fear. They affirm an identity and then feed the opposite with conversations, news, comparisons, and laments. It's like trying to fill a leaky bucket. You pour water in and at the same time let it drain out. And then you blame the universe, blame life, blame people. The problem isn't the lack of water, it's the leakage. Directed silence means choosing an internal theme and protecting that theme as if it were a rare seed. A seed doesn't grow if you dig it up every hour to see if it sprouted. Every time you ask, "Has it happened yet?" You dig. Every time you tell someone it's hard, you dig. Every time you compare yourself to others' lives and conclude you're behind, you dig. And you kill the sprout without seeing it. Stop digging. Practice a type of silence that isn't an absence of thought, but a selection of thought. You become selective, you become precise, you stop giving a stage to what contradicts your choice. Choose a daily interval for this. A few minutes every day where you close your eyes and step into the final state, as if it were clothing. Feel the texture, feel the posture, feel the peace. Then, throughout the day, guard your focus like a doorkeeper. Not with tension, but with respect. If you notice you're feeding an internal dialogue of scarcity, cut it immediately. If you notice you're rehearsing defeat, stop. If you notice you're diminishing yourself to fit into fear, straighten yourself internally. It's not about being perfect, it's about being consistent. And don't use the phrase, "it's difficult," as an excuse to keep living the same way. Difficult is waking up every day dependent on the goodwill of chance. Difficult is living with a tight chest because you've given your authority to the mood of the day. Discipline isn't punishment, it's freedom. You decide what enters your mind, what you consume, who you talk to, and most importantly, what you repeat internally. Repetition creates normalcy. Normalcy creates destiny. Whoever doesn't control repetition becomes a hostage to any stimulus. The fourth principle is the symbolic reading of life and the art of changing meaning. The world speaks through signs, but most people read literally. A person sees a closed door and concludes, "I'm not capable." Sees someone leaving and concludes, I'm not enough. Sees a delay and concludes, I'm doomed. This is childish reading. The law requires maturity. You learn to read symbolically. An obstacle can be protection. A detour can be refinement. A loss can be space opening up. A silence can be rearrangement. You don't idolize forms, you honor direction. Think of a chessboard. You look at an isolated move, and it seems like a loss. A piece is removed, a path disappears. But whoever sees the whole game knows that piece was removed to clear a line. Life does this with people, places, deadlines, opportunities. It moves pieces so that the final configuration becomes possible. If you despair with every move, you abandon the game before checkmate. Symbolic reading gives you peace, and peace isn't passivity. Peace is stability of state. It's you remaining whole while the scenery changes. When something goes wrong, don't ask, why me? As a victim. Ask, what is this reorganizing? Ask, what state was I feeding for this to appear? And adjust in the right place, within. You don't need to fight shadows on the wall, you change the light that projects them. That's why two people experience the same event and have different results. One reads it as a sentence and collapses. The other reads it as a transition and perseveres. The event is the same. The meaning changes. And meaning is the command you give to the future. And then we arrive at the fifth principle, which seals everything and separates those who play with imagination from those who live as operators of their own reality: persistent naturalness. You don't make a state on a good day and abandon it on a bad day. You become the state until it seems normal. Most people want results without changing their normalcy. They want prosperity, but consider it normal to feel guilt when receiving. They want love, but consider it normal to diminish themselves and be suspicious. They want freedom, but consider it normal to seek approval and be tied to others' opinions. The universe doesn't pour everything at your feet onto a self that continues to live internally like a beggar. It pours when you change the internal place from which you live. Persistent naturalness means acting from the state, not to achieve the state. This is refined. It's the difference between I'll do this to prove I can and I do this because this is how I live. It's when you make decisions with a sense of belonging, not with a sense of pleading. You become someone who chooses, not someone who waits. You become someone who receives, not someone who hunts. You become someone who is consulted, not someone who begs for attention. It's not acting, it's not showing off, it's coherence. It's when your thoughts, your feelings, and your choices point to the same place. If you are the prosperous person inside, you organize your mind like a prosperous person. You think of solutions, not fated outcomes. You take care of your time. You take care of your body. You speak with calm firmness. If you are the loved person inside, you stop acting out of fear of losing. You act with the serenity of belonging. If you are the respected person inside, you stop accepting scraps and start positioning yourself with simplicity. Notice, none of this depends on external applause. It depends on sustained internal posture. And here's something the ego hates. Reality isn't a prize, it's a consequence. The law isn't impressed by promises, tears, or phrases repeated without conviction. It responds to permanence. Permanence isn't empty stubbornness, it's fidelity to who you've decided to be. When you persist, life rearranges itself in layers. First ideas change, as if a light turned on. Then encounters change, as if certain people out of nowhere found you. Then decisions change, as if you had the courage to say yes to what previously seemed too much. Then doors change, as if someone opened them without you begging. And finally, facts change, as if the world were compelled to agree. You don't need to wait for everything to be perfect to start. The old trap is this: when I'm calmer, I'll take charge. When I have proof, I'll believe. When I have a little more money, I'll feel secure. This is the visible world trying to put you on a leash. Command comes before proof. Security comes before the number. Peace comes before confirmation. And there's a simple training for moments when life tries to pull you by the collar. When the pressure rises, make 3 internal movements, like a ritual of authority. First, stop for a moment and cut off the automatic reaction. Don't respond to life with the same old voice. Second, breathe and return to your body, because the body is the gateway to your state. A deep breath already changes the frequency. Third, declare internally without anger and without despair what is true for you now. I am in the final state, and then create a short scene, just a few seconds long, that represents the conclusion. It doesn't need to be long, it needs to be real for you. A short scene repeated with feeling becomes an internal signature, and an internal signature becomes a decree. Many people think they need perfect imagination. No, you need faithful imagination. Even if the image is simple, if the feeling is consistent, the law works. The proof that you're truly practicing is one thing. You stop asking the world to calm you down. You calm down internally, and because of that, the world reorganizes itself. One day you'll notice that the person who ignored you now seeks you out. That path that seemed impossible now offers itself. That chance you thought was distant now appears via a route you hadn't even considered. And you understand, it wasn't chance. It was alignment. And I warn you, when the first changes happen, your mind will try to make you return to the old habit, saying, "Now I've succeeded, I can relax." Relaxing isn't abandoning. It's sustaining effortlessly, like someone who already is. Don't treat the new state as a temporary bargain. It is your home. You don't return to the street because it rained today. You don't abandon your house because the light flickered. Flickering happens, but residency is a choice. If someone asks you, how do you maintain this certainty? You don't answer with theories. You answer with posture. You answer by living. Your life becomes the explanation. And sometimes the greatest proof of power is what you don't do. You don't panic. You don't explain yourself. You don't humiliate yourself. You don't chase after scraps. You persist. And persistence is silent command. So stop begging for external changes. Stop negotiating with appearances as if they were judges. Stop asking permission to exist on a higher level. From now on, command silently. Command with certainty. Command with identity. When fear comes, don't feed it. Gather your energy and return to your station. When delay appears, don't turn it into a sentence. Read it as a transition. When your mind wants to dig up the earth to see if it's sprouted, close your hand and protect the seed. And most importantly, be coherent. Because coherence is the language reality understands. Do you want the universe to lay everything at your feet? Then do the only thing that compels the world to obey. Be internally what you want to see. Be so consistently that doubt seems strange, that the old mental misery seems like a language you've forgotten. And if you want to consolidate this training with more clarity and method, go back to the link in the pinned comment and use the material for daily practice. One step at a time, one application at a time, until the new normalcy becomes your second skin. Reality has no alternative in the face of a sustained state. It aligns, and you finally understand that the universe doesn't lay everything at your feet out of kindness, nor out of caprice. It does so because within you, the order has already been given, and you won't go back. The order was given when you stopped kneeling internally and sat on the throne of your own consciousness. So from now on, make this a commitment. When the world offers anxiety, you respond with presence. When it offers doubt, you respond with decision. When it offers delay, you respond with permanence. You don't need to argue with life. You need to inhabit the state that life is compelled to reflect. And if you want an immediate practical step, something you can start today, go back to the pinned comment and get the indicated material. Use it as daily training, like a map, to keep your imagination firm, your focus clear, and your final identity constant until the new state feels natural. Then, without noise and without effort, you'll see reality aligning, like iron attracted by a magnet. Now silence the begging. Silence the excuses. Silence the old story. Command silently and with certainty. Be internally, and the world, externally, will have to obey. There is something modern man has forgotten, and this forgetfulness has made him a slave to what he himself unknowingly creates. He lives asking, seeking, fearing, and fighting, as if there were a force outside him controlling the threads of destiny. But I tell you, with the same authority with which ancient mystery schools instructed their initiates, everything that happens to you is merely a reflection of what you are assuming yourself to be. There are no enemies out there. There is no luck, no misfortune, no chance. The visible world is a shadow cast by your consciousness. and the shadow, however real it may seem, is always controlled by the light that generates it. Most people live reacting to appearances, to bills, diagnoses, relationships, the news. They believe that life begins on the outside and ends within, when in fact it is the opposite. The universe is a response, not a cause. Matter obeys mind, as clay obeys the potter. But man has forgotten that he is the potter. He looks at the clay and calls what he himself has shaped destiny. The most powerful secret in the world, the secret few dare to use, is the law of assumption. It states that everything you assume to be true within yourself will inevitably become reality in the world. There are no exceptions, no limits, no delay, except that imposed by your doubt. What you feel and believe yourself to be, you are. What you doubt, you are not. It is so simple that the intellect rejects it, because the ego wants complexity, formulas, rituals, and methods. But truth needs no adornments. It is silent, absolute, present. When I say assume, I don't mean a fleeting thought, but a sustained state. To assume is to live inwardly the feeling of the fulfilled desire, until it becomes so natural that the world is compelled to mirror that conviction. It is not visualization without faith, nor repetition without emotion. It is knowing. It is walking with the serenity of one who already possesses what has not yet manifested. The ancients called this dwelling in the kingdom. Neville called it living in the end. I call you to remember yourself, the creator who exists behind the mask of personality. What seems impossible to you today is nothing more than a state you have not yet chosen to inhabit. When you change your state of consciousness, everything else will effortlessly align. This is the key that the wise hid in parables, that prophets encoded in symbols, and that common men ignored, seeking outside what was always within. And that is why I tell you, the greatest power in the world is not to change things, it is to change the state from which things emanate. When this is understood, suffering will cease to have purpose, and man will once again become master of his own reality. Look around you. Everything that surrounds you, the body you inhabit, the people you meet, the situations you face, are not causes, but effects. They are echoes of a previous vibration originating within you. Most people believe that life pushes them, that destiny shapes them, that circumstances dictate their path. But what actually happens is the opposite. The world is an obedient mirror that only reflects the inner state of the observer. Nothing happens to you without first having happened within you. This is the basis of all conscious creation and the first step to reclaiming mastery over your existence. He who understands this stops blaming, resisting, and fearing. He understands that there is no out there is only projection. Just as a film does not exist outside the light that projects it, your life does not exist outside the consciousness that sustains it. Humanity's error is trying to correct the scenes of the film without ever looking at the projector. They want to change their partner, job, body, government, but they never change the state from which all of this originated. And while they struggle with the images, they perpetuate the same plot. The inner state is the matrix of all experiences. It is an invisible field that precedes the visible world, like a drawing precedes a sculpture. If fear dwells within you, the world will show you reasons to fear. If you carry guilt, it will offer you punishment. But if you live in a state of faith, completeness, and certainty, everything around you begins to reorganize itself around that axis. The physical world is slow, but it is faithful. It follows your vibration with absolute precision, even when you doubt it. Those who are still spiritually asleep believe they need to fight to achieve what they desire, that they need to prove their worth, deserve, convince, compete. But he who awakens understands that the universe is merely an echo of what is felt and assumed in consciousness. The struggle disappears when the correct state is assumed, not because the world becomes easier, but because there is no longer resistance between what is imagined and what is experienced. External harmony is the inevitable reflection of internal harmony. When you understand that the inner state is the only cause, everything shifts within you. You cease to be a victim and become the origin. You no longer ask reality to favor you, you silently mold it. The word miracle loses its mystery because it becomes merely the name given to the perfect alignment between the invisible and the visible. And you realize, with a mixture of wonder and reverence, that you were never separate from the power that moves the heavens and the earth. Therefore, I tell you, the true work is not to transform things, but to transform your state of being. It is to turn inward and adjust the center from which everything emanates. When the state changes, the world changes. Not because the world is persuaded, but because it is a faithful reflection. This is the law, this is the order. The entire universe awaits your dominant vibration to know what to manifest. And what it will manifest will always be what you are, not what you desire. Because desire is future, but being is now. When your being aligns with what you desire, reality obeys instantly. Everything begins in the invisible. Everything begins within you. Life changes when man realizes that each state of consciousness is a garment he chooses to wear. Just as you change clothes effortlessly, you can also change the state you inhabit. But for that, you must first recognize that you are wearing one. Most people live identified with their feelings and thoughts as if they were their very identity. They say, I am anxious, I am poor, I am rejected. I am... But these are not eternal truths. They are merely mental garments, temporary states. The problem is that man forgets that he can shed them. The secret lies in understanding that everything you feel yourself to be naturally manifests. It is not what you desire that becomes real, but what you accept as true about yourself. If you believe you are worthy, everything in life will confirm your worthiness. If you see yourself as incapable, the world will become a showcase of limitations. The universe does not argue with you, it simply agrees. Consciousness is the only mold, and feeling is the material with which you shape the invisible. But there is a crucial point. You cannot put on a new state while still holding on to the old one. Many want to be prosperous, but still think and feel like the poor. They want to be loved, but continue to react like someone who has been rejected. They want freedom, but carry guilt, and so they live in contradiction, imagining a new destiny, but sustaining the same emotions that prevent it from being born. The new state is not imposed by force, it is assumed by surrender. You must abandon the old you to inhabit the new. To assume a state is not to pretend, nor to lie to oneself. To pretend is to say one thing and feel another. To assume is to feel something until the world confirms it. When someone inwardly places themselves in the state of already being, the universe silently reorganizes to correspond to that vibration. Everything around begins to cooperate with the image sustained within. Coincidences multiply, doors open, faces change expression, not because something external has been forced, but because the invisible field has been altered. Each state has its own logic, its own thoughts and corresponding circumstances. When you clothe yourself in the state of success, you naturally begin to think, act, and decide like someone successful. You no longer strive to change behaviors, they change on their own because the new state demands new actions. Similarly, when you clothe yourself in the state of failure, even your good ideas seem to die before they are born. Life does not respond to your effort, but to your identity. And that is why the true spiritual work is not to fight against symptoms, but to change the cause, to change the state. Ask yourself, what would a man who already has what I desire feel now? And then feel that as if it were real. Remain in that feeling until it becomes natural. When that happens, you will need to do nothing more. The old world will dissolve, and the new will appear without a sound, like the dawn that effortlessly follows the night. Because to change the state is to change destiny. Everything you seek already exists on another level of consciousness, simply waiting for you to clothe yourself in it. Imagination is the sanctuary of creative power. Everything that has ever existed, a house, a city, a symphony, an invention, was first born as an inner image. Before something could be seen, it had to be felt. The error of the common mind is to think that imagining is daydreaming, escaping reality. But what few understand is that imagination is not escape. It is the creative act in its purest form. The visible world is merely the hardened shell of a mental image that was once alive within someone. When you imagine something with emotion and certainty, you are not playing with thoughts, you are planting causes. and every cause seeks expression. Imagination, when fueled by feeling, is the silent generator of circumstances. It is not reasoning that creates, it is sustained vision. The rational mind observes what is, imagination decides what will be. It is in it that true authority over the world is found. The man who masters his imagination is lord of all. He who uses it without awareness is a slave to his own creations. Everything you hold firmly in your mind, feeling it as real, inevitably descends into manifestation. That is the law, and it acts whether you know it or not. When you imagine fear, you create events that confirm it. When you imagine love, you attract expressions of it. The universe does not distinguish between what is good or bad, right or wrong. It merely gives form to what is held with faith. Just as fire heats or destroys depending on who uses it, imagination builds or consumes depending on the consciousness that directs it. Ancient mystics called imagination God's workshop, and they were right, because it is in this inner space that you mold the invisible, choosing what the world will show you later. There are no limits here, only those you place upon yourself. What you dare to see within yourself is what the universe will dare to materialize outside. If you imagine small, you will live small. If you imagine grandly, destiny itself will expand to accompany you. But there is a secret few understand. Imagination only creates when accompanied by the corresponding emotion. Thinking of wealth while feeling fear is like trying to light a bonfire underwater. Feeling is the fuel of creation. Therefore, it is not enough to visualize, you must feel. Close your eyes and imagine what you desire with the same naturalness with which you relive a memory. Feel the touch, the sound, the smell, the emotion of already possessing it. Sustain this until it feels real. At that instant, the invisible begins to move. You do not need to know how it will happen. The how belongs to the wisdom that operates beyond your reason. Your part is simply to keep the image alive without doubting. Doubt is the wind that extinguishes the fire of creation. Faith is the breath that intensifies it. And when your imagination becomes more real than the external world bows before it. Thus manifests the silent power of conscious creators. They live more intensely in what they imagine than in what they see. The common man reacts to life, the awakened man projects it, and while one struggles with appearances, the other molds them as the sculptor molds clay. Because in the end, everything that exists is image, and the world is merely the mirror of what you dare to imagine and feel as true. Doubt is the invisible poison that destroys the works of the spirit before they can blossom in the world. It is the subtle voice that says, "What if it doesn't work out?" And with that, extinguishes the light of faith that was beginning to illuminate the invisible. Many believe they have faith, but what they truly possess is fragile hope mixed with fear. True faith does not await signs. It creates them. It is the silent conviction of one who has already seen within what has not yet appeared without. Therefore, the fourth principle is this: sustain your vision firmly, because the world bows to the persistence of one who knows. When you doubt, you send contradictory signals to the universe. It is like lighting a flame and immediately extinguishing it, hoping the fire remains lit. Each time you imagine and then immediately ask yourself, will this work? You are interrupting the creative process. Doubt is not innocent. It is the force that disintegrates what your imagination began to build. And that is why faith needs to be cultivated as a state, not as an effort. True faith is calm, not anxious. It is silent, not noisy. It is certainty, not expectation. The man who doubts is like one who plants a seed and, impatient, digs up the earth every day to see if it has sprouted. In his impatience, he destroys what he wished to grow. Nature teaches that there is an invisible time between planting and harvesting. A time when nothing seems to happen, but when everything is quietly organizing itself. Spiritual life follows the same rhythm. The invisible works in your favor when you trust, and stops working when you distrust. Doubt closes the channel through which the impossible becomes possible. Learn, then, to remain steadfast in the face of appearances. When everything around you screams that it's impossible, close your eyes and return to the state where it is already real. Sustain that state as if it were the only world that exists. The secret is not to force the outcome. It is to refuse to depart from the inner vision. Doubt is born from the habit of looking outward for proof, but the wise look only inward. He who remains faithful to his inner image sees the world slowly bending to his faith until the impossible becomes common. And when fear tries to make you give up, remember, it is merely the shadow of your old identity trying to survive. It has no power unless you believe in it. Remain in the assumed state even when nothing seems to change, because it is precisely in that silence that the universe moves. The invisible works when the visible is silent. Doubt will always come to try and pull you out of that state, but that is where faith shows its strength, not when everything seems possible, but when nothing appears to be. He who persists discovers that the world has no choice but to surrender, because sustained consciousness is irresistible. It bends time, dissolves obstacles, and aligns the improbable in your direction. Therefore, learn to protect your vision from doubt as you would protect a flame in a gale. Do not explain. Do not justify. Do not ask for confirmation. Just know. Because he who truly knows no longer needs to believe. He has become the living proof of what he once dared to imagine. The end is the beginning. Few understand the depth of this truth. Most men live trying to get somewhere, as if the desired state were in the future, distant, conditioned, dependent on time and effort. But time is an illusion created by the mind that has not yet awakened to the eternal now. All that is already is. All that will be already exists, simply waiting for someone to assume it. Therefore, he who wishes to manifest something needs to learn to live as if it already were. This is the supreme mystery of conscious creation, to feel the fulfilled end until the universe bows to inner certainty. The rational mind rejects this idea because it has been trained to react to appearances and believe in the visible. It wants to see first, then believe. But the divine law operates in reverse. First you believe, and then you see. What you feel now is what sets the stage for your tomorrow. There is no future separate from your present state. The future is merely the ripened present. When you act and think from the desired end, you place yourself in the vibration of what you want, and that vibration begins to reorganize the world around you. Living as if it already were is not pretending or escaping reality. It is creating a new reality from the inside out. It is to keep your mind and heart anchored in the feeling of inner possession. When you do this, the universe understands that that experience is already yours. It does not question, does not delay, does not evaluate if you deserve it. It simply responds to the dominant vibration of your being. And the most extraordinary thing is that when you remain in that state, you begin to act naturally as someone who has already achieved what they desire. Your voice changes, your gaze changes, your decisions change. Everything within you aligns with the new identity. Those who are spiritually asleep believe they first need to change the world to then feel peace. Those who awaken understand that it is by feeling peace that the world changes. The end is the beginning, because the feeling of the end creates the path that makes it inevitable. The road does not appear before faith, it appears because of it. When the inner state is complete, the outer precipitates, like iron drawn by an invisible magnet. And here is the most subtle point. The end must be lived in silence. He who truly knows does not speak. He who trusts does not rush. Power acts in stillness, because conviction needs no witnesses. When you close your eyes and inhabit the state of already being, you are touching the same power that moves planets, raises mountains, and dissolves seas, and that power does not fail. Everything you desire already exists now, in potential, awaiting your acceptance. When you place yourself at the end and refuse to depart from it, time bends to serve you. Opportunities arise, people appear, coincidences align. It is not luck, it is law. And the visible world, which seemed distant and resistant, reveals itself as malleable as clay before your certainty. Therefore, abandon the struggle and enter the state of the fulfilled end. See yourself already living what you desire and feel the gratitude of one who has arrived. Do not await signs. Be the sign. Because the true creator does not seek the result. He embodies it. And when the end becomes your starting point, the miracle ceases to be a miracle and becomes merely the natural order of things. We have reached the point where truth reveals itself with absolute simplicity. There is nothing outside you that can save you, punish you, or reward you. All reality is merely the mirror of the state you choose to inhabit. Therefore, the final principle is a call to silent action. Stop begging for external changes and begin to command, with inner authority, that life obey the state you have assumed. The universe does not respond to pleas, it responds to the vibration of being. He who asks demonstrates absence. He who commands demonstrates possession. And what the universe recognizes is always possession. The man who understands this law ceases to be a servant of circumstances. He no longer prays by asking, but by affirming. He no longer seeks, but accepts. He no longer laments, but creates. Power lies in the recognition that there is no distance between what you desire and what you are. The request and the answer are one single movement. The act of assuming is the very act of receiving. But few dare to live with such consciousness because the fear of their own greatness still makes them believe in external forces, in merits, in punishments. All of this is illusion. The only throne of power is within. When you truly understand that the world is a reflection, you discover that any attempt to change the exterior without altering the interior is a waste of energy. True prayer is the silence of certainty. It is to look at a situation and instead of reacting with despair to affirm within yourself, this too shall bend. Because everything that has been created can be recreated. No form is fixed, no problem is permanent, no obstacle is absolute. Everything obeys the consciousness that sustains it, and the secret is this: speak little and feel much. A word when born from a weak state is noise, but when it comes from certainty it is decree. When you command with true feeling, you are not imposing something on the world, you are reminding the universe who you are. Power does not come from force, it comes from clarity. It is not the intensity of the shout that moves mountains, but the purity of the consciousness that emits it. The conscious creator does not struggle, does not insist, does not despair. He decides and rests. He feels what he wants to be and remains in that feeling until the world reorganizes itself around him. And the world always reorganizes itself. The house, the job, love, health, all are reflected images of an inner state. When the state changes, everything changes. Therefore, from now on, silence the voice of spiritual beggary and awaken the command of your divine nature. No longer say, I want, but I am. Do not ask, declare. Do not wait, assume. Every breath you take is a vibrational command emitted to the universe, and the entire creation awaits your instructions. He who understands this ceases to fear, because he knows that nothing happens to him. Everything obeys him. Time, chance, and destiny become servants of awakened consciousness, and it is at that instant that man returns to his true place, that of creator. Silence becomes the prayer, feeling becomes the altar, and life, the faithful mirror of what he has chosen to be. So remember, power is not in the shout, but in certainty. It is not in waiting, but in assumption. Live now as one who already is, and the universe will confirm your word, because the world is merely the echo of what you dare to declare in silence. Friends, many people live with the false idea that to attract money all it takes is physical effort, long hours of work, or waiting for a stroke of luck. But let me tell you something with complete clarity. Money starts in the mind, not in the pocket. Everything you possess today, and whether little or much, is merely a reflection of the images you have held within yourself over the years. The external world is not the cause, but the effect. The true cause is always in the subconscious, that silent treasure residing within each of us. Imagine the subconscious as fertile, infinite soil. It doesn't judge, criticize, or question. It merely receives the seed and makes it grow. If you sow thoughts of lack, of I never succeed, of money is hard, this soil responds with fruits of limitation. But if consciously you decide to plant ideas of abundance, progress, and ease, the subconscious obeys, arranges circumstances, inspires actions, and creates opportunities that you would never have calculated logically. It's as if invisible forces begin to conspire in your favor. This process is more powerful than the so-called law of attraction because it doesn't just depend on desiring or waiting. It's based on something much deeper, the recording of the desired state in the inner mind until that image becomes a conviction. The law of attraction is often understood as waiting for something to come from outside, but the method I teach shows that everything is already within, and the subconscious is the channel through which the invisible becomes visible. Perhaps you ask yourself, but how can I trust that this works? Think of the countless cases of spontaneous healing, of people who recovered their health simply by changing their belief. Think of those who prospered after replacing thoughts of failure with affirmations of success. This isn't magic, it's law. Just as gravity works for everyone, the subconscious responds faithfully to anyone who learns to use its language, images, words, emotions, and faith. And here's the beauty of this truth. It doesn't matter your past, your current situation, or the mistakes you've made. The subconscious holds no grudges. It's always ready to receive new programming, a new seed. Each day, you have before you the chance to start anew, to plant a new vision of life, and inevitably harvest richer and more abundant results. When you observe your life and everything in it, the place you live, the money you earn, the people around you, even how you feel in the face of challenges, you are looking at a screen that was first painted within your mind. Nothing comes to you by chance. Every detail of your world is the expression of images that were nurtured within the subconscious, often without you realizing it. It's like watching a movie whose script was silently written by the thoughts and beliefs you consistently held. This is why so many people remain stuck in difficulties for years. They continue to project the same narrative of scarcity within themselves, and the subconscious, faithful and obedient, transforms these repeated scenes into reality. To change this story, you need to understand that the subconscious mind doesn't work with complicated reasoning. It responds to images, feelings, and repetitions. Every time you imagine yourself in a certain situation, even if only for a few minutes, you are planting a seed in this fertile soil. If that image is charged with emotion, it is imprinted even faster. Think of someone who spends sleepless nights worrying about debts. Their inner mind continuously receives the command that lack of money is the normal state, and inevitably creates more circumstances that confirm this fear. But imagine another person who, before sleeping, closes their eyes and sees themselves counting bills, paying everything peacefully, and still having plenty left over. This image, repeated with serenity, begins to replace old patterns and sooner or later becomes a lived fact. It's not physical effort nor incessant struggle that opens the doors to prosperity, but the silent conviction that you already possess what you desire. It's like an architect who, before building a house, visualizes every detail on paper. If they design a palace, they cannot expect a hut to appear. If they design a hut, they won't get a palace. The subconscious is this invisible architect who always builds from what is given to it. Therefore, the discipline of imagining wealth, abundance, and success is not a naive fantasy, but a practice of inner programming. Many ask, but isn't it deceiving myself to imagine what I don't yet have? The answer is simple. You never create from what is visible, but from what is rooted in the mind. All great discoveries, all advancements, all fortunes began as an invisible idea, sustained with faith until they materialized. Edison saw the light bulb in his mind before the world saw it lit. A prosperous entrepreneur sees themselves expanding before a single building exists. A healthy person imagines themselves cured even amidst illness. The invisible always precedes the visible. Therefore, if you desire more money, start in the inner laboratory of imagination. See yourself receiving, spending wisely, helping others, living peacefully. It's not a question of asking how it will come. The how belongs to the subconscious, which moves people, ideas, and circumstances to materialize your vision. Your only responsibility is to clearly choose the image you wish to hold, water it with positive emotion, and repeat it until it becomes so natural that you already feel it to be true. The moment this acceptance occurs, the exterior begins to organize itself in harmony with the interior. This is the secret many ignore. You don't attract what you desire occasionally, but what you continuously imagine and feel to be real. And by understanding this, you become the master of your own financial life, because you stop being a hostage to external events and become the conscious creator of the script you wish to live. When we think of prosperity, it's not enough to merely form mental images of wealth and abundance. It's fundamental to understand the role of the words we repeat daily. Every phrase spoken with conviction and emotion is like a command recorded in the subconscious, which never questions whether it is good or bad. It simply accepts. This is why many people remain stuck in difficulties for years without realizing that it's their own negative affirmations that keep scarcity active. When someone continuously says, "There's never anything left," money vanishes, things are getting harder and harder, they are sowing exactly those experiences. The subconscious responds like an obedient servant and produces situations that confirm this decree. The inner mind is profoundly influenced by repetition. Words spoken once might not create much impact, but when repeated dozens of times, charged with emotion, they become like hammer blows that clear a path to penetrate the deepest mind. This is why the ancients called the practice incessant prayer. It didn't mean mechanical repetition, but rather keeping alive within oneself the idea, the phrase, the command one wished to see realized. Just as a farmer waters their crop every day, whoever wishes to prosper needs to water their subconscious with words of abundance and success. Try affirming with serenity, "I am rich now. Wealth surrounds me. Everything I do prospers." At first, it might seem like just a play on words, but as you persist, something within you begins to accept it as truth. This silent acceptance is the turning point. The subconscious mind, once convinced, mobilizes invisible resources, inspires ideas, draws people closer, opens opportunities. It's as if you've given an order to the universe, and life begins to organize itself to fulfill it. It's important to emphasize that this isn't about repeating phrases like a parrot without emotion. The words need to be accompanied by a feeling of conviction, however small. If you don't fully believe at first, persist. Belief will grow as results start to appear. Think of someone who plants a tree. In the first few days, they see nothing but soil, but they continue watering because they trust in the law of growth. The same happens with affirmations. They create invisible roots before the fruits appear. And remember, every time you catch yourself repeating negative phrases, replace them immediately with positive affirmations. If you say, "I can't pay my bills," stop and declare, "I pay all my bills with ease. Abundance flows freely to me." The subconscious isn't offended by the change. On the contrary, it readily accepts the new command and begins to work to make it a reality. This is how you become the author of your own financial destiny. What you affirm with faith transforms into experience. Money doesn't appear by chance, but as a natural consequence of the verbal seeds you plant daily. Choose, therefore, words of wealth, tranquility, and abundance. By doing so, you will be programming the subconscious to inevitably produce results of prosperity in your life. There is a silent force that gives life to the images and words you place in your mind. This force is faith. I'm not referring to blind belief, but to the inner conviction that transforms an idea into reality. Without faith, images remain mere daydreams, but when you feel that what you desire is already true, the subconscious immediately accepts it and begins to work in your favor. It's like lighting the flame that sets in motion all the invisible machinery of the universe. Think of a child who fully believes the words of their father or mother. For them, there is no doubt that it is true, because the trust is complete. Similarly, the subconscious responds when you address it with faith. If you repeat an affirmation with fear and doubt, it's like planting a seed and watering it with poison. It will hardly bear fruit. But if you speak with the certainty that you already possess what you affirm, the seed inevitably develops and grows. Many everyday examples show this power. There are people who, even amidst illness, repeat with conviction, "I am healthy, I am strong. Divine life flows through every cell of my body." Over time, this belief penetrates the subconscious, and the body responds, manifesting healing. The same happens with money. When someone, even without seeing resources at the moment, declares with faith, "I am rich, prosperity is my inheritance, abundance accompanies me," the subconscious begins to organize means, inspire ideas, and open paths for this condition to become tangible. Faith is like the engine that makes a car move. You can have a perfect vehicle, but without fuel, it won't go anywhere. So it is with your mental images. However beautiful they may be, without inner confidence, they will lack creative power. It is faith that gives movement, direction, and energy to the process. It's important to remember that this confidence doesn't have to be absolute from the very first moment. Just start with a small degree of belief and allow it to grow. The more you practice, the more results begin to appear, and each small piece of evidence further strengthens your conviction. It's like someone learning to swim. At first they enter the water hesitantly, but as they realize they can float, fear gives way to full confidence. So, when you wish to attract money, don't just limit yourself to imagining or repeating words. Feel that you already possess what you affirm. Give thanks in advance, like someone receiving a gift. The emotion of gratitude is a seal that imprints faith in the subconscious. And when this imprint is complete, no external power can prevent its realization. Money, opportunities, creative ideas, and the right means will come naturally, because faith will have activated the law of the subconscious, and this law never fails. Many give up before seeing the fruits because they don't understand a fundamental law. The subconscious responds to perseverance, not haste. Imagine a farmer who plants seeds in a fertile field. If every 2 days they dig up the earth to check if they've germinated, they will destroy the growth process. Similarly, someone who affirms prosperity today and tomorrow gives in to doubt, nullifying their confidence, delays the flourishing of what had already begun to sprout. The subconscious works in silence at the right time, invisibly, and only needs you to hold the image, sow the word, and trust in the harvest. Many people complain, but I repeated affirmations for a week and nothing happened. Think carefully. A week is like a glass of water poured over a leafy tree that needs rivers to grow. Perseverance is the key that keeps the idea alive until it takes root. It's not about arduous effort, but serene constancy, like someone who waters their plants daily without questioning whether the law of nature continues to function. You don't see the roots growing, but you know they are there. So it is with your ideas of abundance. To persevere doesn't mean fighting against the external world, but holding firm to the inner vision even when the senses seem to deny it. If your bills keep coming, don't fall into despair. Keep declaring, "I always have more than enough." If opportunities seem distant, keep imagining open doors. If the money hasn't appeared yet, give thanks as if you've already received it. Each repetition is a drop of water that nourishes the root. The subconscious is like an impressionable child. It learns through constant repetition. If you say something only once, it might not register. But if you repeat it calmly, night after night, sooner or later, it accepts it as truth. It's like learning a new language or an instrument. Mastery doesn't come from haste, but from daily practice. A person who insists on playing the piano every day, even with mistakes at first, will eventually master the keys. Similarly, whoever insists on visualizing wealth and repeating affirmations of prosperity will eventually shape a new financial reality. Perseverance also protects against the greatest enemy, doubt. When you maintain a daily practice, positive seeds increasingly occupy space in the mind, and old thoughts of fear lose their strength. It's like filling a dark glass with clean water. Little by little, all the dirt is replaced until only clarity remains. Therefore, don't underestimate the power of continuing even when nothing seems to change. The silence of invisible growth prepares for the great revelation in the visible world. Whoever learns to persevere discovers that abundance is not a stroke of luck, but the inevitable result of a natural process. The more you practice, the closer you are to blossoming. Each day that you sustain your vision with confidence, you are taking a firm step towards manifestation. This is how the subconscious responds, faithfully at the right time, bringing forth what you have decided to record within yourself. Everything you see around you, your home, your clothes, your job, your bank account, even the people who are part of your life, is nothing more than a mirror of what you carry in your inner world. It's impossible to experience something on the external plane that hasn't first found refuge in the subconscious. It's like looking at a reflection in a mirror. If you want to change the image, there's no point in trying to touch the glass. You need to change what's in front of it. That's how life works. External circumstances are merely reflections of what you nurture within. When someone constantly lives worried about debts, anxious about the future, or dominated by the fear of loss, their subconscious mind records this state as a command. The reflection of this is a world full of unexpected bills, doors that seem to close, and opportunities that slip through one's fingers. On the other hand, when a person dedicates themselves to cultivating thoughts of abundance, confidence, and gratitude, even if their external conditions haven't changed yet, they begin to create a different reflection. Little by little, new contacts emerge, doors open, and even the unexpected organizes itself in their favor. It's like a gardener who, upon seeing weeds in the yard, understands that they grew because seeds were cast there, perhaps by the wind, perhaps unknowingly. If they want to change the scenery, they don't argue with the plants, but decide to pull out the bad weeds and plant new seeds of flowers and fruits. You should act similarly. Don't fight against the external situation. First, change the inner seeds. Replace phrases like, "It never works out for me," with "Everything I do prospers." Exchange images of failure for visions of success. At first, it might seem like an artificial exercise, but remember that the subconscious is neutral ground. It doesn't distinguish between real and imagined. It merely responds faithfully to what is planted in it. A person who wishes to improve their financial life, but keeps repeating, "I'm broke, I can't get out of this situation," daily reinforces the image of poverty. The subconscious records this as truth and organizes external life to confirm the pattern. But another, even while facing the same bills, chooses to say, "I am prosperous, wealth surrounds me, opportunities come to me now." This new pattern, repeated with perseverance, begins to replace the old one. The reflection, inevitably, is an external life that aligns with the new belief. Everything, absolutely everything, begins within. You cannot expect a harvest of apples if you plant orange seeds. Likewise, you cannot expect prosperity if you plant fear, doubt, and failure. The external world is always a faithful messenger, never an enemy. It merely returns what you send from your interior. And here is the great good news. If your external life is not pleasing, you have the power to transform it by changing the images, words, and feelings you cultivate within. Nothing is lost, nothing is definitive. The reflection changes when the cause changes. And the cause is always in your subconscious mind, awaiting the new programming you decide to plant today. My friends, we have reached the essential point of this journey. Everything we've discussed so far can be summarized in a simple and liberating truth. The life you live today is the result of what was planted yesterday in your subconscious, and the life you will live tomorrow will depend on what you decide to plant now. There is no chance, no blind luck. There is law, there is order. There is a faithful response from the inner mind to everything you consistently and emotionally imprint upon it. You have learned that mental images are invisible seeds that germinate into reality, that repeated words shape destiny, that faith is the engine that gives life to ideas, that perseverance ensures growth, and that the external world is nothing more than a reflection of the inner world. These principles are not theories but proven practices. When applied sincerely, they transform lives, heal illnesses, restore relationships, multiply financial resources, and bring peace of mind. The invitation I leave you with is simple yet powerful. From today on, abandon the habit of cultivating thoughts of fear, scarcity, and failure. They do not serve you. They build nothing. They only reinforce a cycle of limitations. Instead, firmly choose to plant only images of health, abundance, love, and fulfillment. Repeat words of power. See yourself already living the life you desire. Feel anticipatory gratitude, as if everything has already been fulfilled. Don't wait for change to come from outside, because it begins within. When the subconscious accepts your new programming, the external world has no alternative but to reflect this new order. This is the law, immutable, faithful, and available to all who dare to use it. So walk with confidence. See each day as an opportunity to sow a new reality. Affirm with joy, visualize with faith, persist with serenity. Your subconscious is an inexhaustible treasure, always ready to give you more than you ask for, more than you imagine. Everything you need is already within you, awaiting only the right direction. Decide today not to live any longer as a victim of circumstances, but as the conscious creator of your own life. Plant wealth and you will harvest wealth. Plant peace and you will harvest peace. Plant love and you will harvest love. The subconscious does not fail, it always responds. And if you learn to give it only what you wish to harvest, your life will inevitably become a radiant reflection of prosperity, harmony, and fulfillment.